Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Michael Perch. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Just fine. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm excited to learn about what you've been working on and building here, Michael. Michael is the founder and principal of Roadmap Consulting. What you'll find with Roadmap Consulting is really that it brings together the business and the public and the private sector, and really kind of handles a whole bunch of different areas where those two worlds meet. And Michael works with small businesses to make the most of that space, as well as individuals to develop their skills in knowing how to navigate that lovely, complex, but extremely important world, the federal government. And last but not least, how does technology play into that world? Michael's built a successful business in that area as well. So lots to talk about today. But before we get there, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Sure thing. Again, thank you for having me on. So I got started way back right around early 90s or so, starting out in a career in commercial banking, making small loans or loans to small businesses that were involved in all sectors of technology, structuring those loans, evaluating the risk, understanding how the companies operated in order to best protect the interests of the bank that I worked for. And did that for about 8 years, learned a lot about the success stories of those companies that did well, and also saw the companies that didn't do so well and learned a lot from that as well. And at the ripe old age of 29, thought that I had a pretty thorough knowledge as to how to start a business and run it successfully. And so I started a company called Corporate Presentation Systems, located in Tampa, Florida. And we were involved in designing and building audiovisual systems, and thought I pretty much had it all outlined in my business plan. Got started, and for the first 3 or 4 years, like most small businesses, didn't do so well, and learned some lessons. And one day got a call from a guy who told me I needed to really look at federal government contracting as opposed to the commercial market that I was dealing with. And was fortunate enough to be in an area of the country, Tampa, Florida, that had MacDill Air Force Base nearby and had a very large presence there in the town of Tampa, and had a lot of opportunities for small businesses to engage with the federal government. So started calling on them actively, and probably about a year or so into that, I got my first government contract, got my taste of it, and it really kind of reminded me of banking in a sense, because it was very structured, very well thought out. I'm a pretty conservative guy by nature, so I kind of liked the way the whole contracting methodology operated, the contracting officer, the program manager, and how I kind of fit into all that. So I got a taste of it and loved it, and then started calling on agencies like MacDill Air Force Base here in the Washington D.C. area. And fortunately enough, landed a large contract with the Navy, moved up here in 1994, and started a technology company, or continued the technology company that I started, but expanded it a great deal here in the Washington, D.C. area, and ran that company for 17 years and sold it in 2006.
Wow. And I mean, what a breadth of knowledge that you build. It's such a challenging sector. As someone who has pitched for federal contracts, I know I know the joys and challenges of that. So kudos to you, Michael, for succeeding in that area. But tell me really how you've developed the latest business, which is Roadmap Consulting. It seems like this has really been able to leverage on that body of work that you've done throughout your career and really taking it to the next level.
Yeah, so, it was amazing to me that the 17-year run that I had, as I was going through all the different phases that most small businesses go through as they enter into the federal government contracting market, you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot not to know, right? And all throughout my 17-year run, I kept saying there's got to be somebody out there that is a consultant that has gone through what I'm going through, can give me good advice and direction, provide me with honest answers. Key word there, honest, right? No hidden agendas, just, a fellow that really wants to, or a lady who wants to help see me succeed and that sort of thing. And lo and behold, in 17 years, I never found a person like that. So when I sold my technology company, I retired about $2.5 million of debt. I think all my gray hairs had sprouted at that point, and I knew I didn't want to go back into anything like that again. And I had an itch to really get involved in helping to provide those same solutions that I was looking for that 17-year run. And so my first thought was, let me volunteer and kind of find out how I can maybe turn this into a business model. And so I volunteered with an organization named SCORE, which stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. Great organization, by the way. That is kind of like the sister organization to the Small Business Administration. And I got on with them and did one-on-one counseling with folks, just like me, that had various different situations being pitched at them as they were trying to succeed, and really needed a helping hand, needed guidance, needed someone they could trust. The same thing I was looking for. And I did that for 3 years as a volunteer and loved it. And also taught some seminars on things like project management, acquiring a GSA schedule, getting small business designations and all that kind of thing, and really enjoyed that time. So in 2009, I started Roadmap Consulting, which is the firm that I still own. And at that time, all I was looking to do is to do exactly what I was doing with SCORE, but essentially to monetize it. And so we help companies to acquire small business designations, get on GSA schedule, which is one of the key elements in growing your company in the federal sector, competing from some of the larger government-wide acquisition contracts that are out there, picking teaming partners to go after opportunities with, acquiring corporate qualifications that can help make them more attractive to government buyers, all those sorts of things. And that's what kind of got us started. It's what we continue to do to this day. As I mentioned to you, we supplemented that with some other things that we do as well. But that is the main thrust of what we do right now. We represent roughly 72 companies on an ongoing basis, everything from going after some of the more attractive vehicles that pop up from time to time. Like right now, Polaris is in the news. That's the big one. Last year it was CIO SP4. The year before that, it was GSA 8A Stars 3. These are all vehicles that are strategic in terms of getting on them to position yourself with key targeted agencies that you identify that you want to try to go after. And we help companies to do that. We also help them to acquire small business designations and basically win contracts, proposal support, you name it. We help in any way we can to get companies well positioned to win.
I love it. Business. And I know that these federal contracts can really reshape an enterprise, and certainly helping those SMBs, the small to medium sized businesses, get into that game is no small feat, right? Because it's dominated by those whales out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's kudos to you to be able to do that. But I mean, I'd just be curious to see how that's evolved and changed. I mean, I imagine today you're seeing some trends on how companies are approaching it differently, some new ways that companies need to be positioning themselves that are more effective. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, back when the pandemic began 2 years ago, I got a call from a buddy of mine who wanted me to become a member of the task force for the Small Business Development Center at Howard University here in town. And the reason why he wanted me to come on board was to address some of those same things you just mentioned. Of course, the pandemic was impacting businesses negatively in a profound way, unprecedented. Nothing like that had ever happened before. So there were record numbers of companies going out of business in the federal sector and also in the commercial sector as well. So I got on board with the task force with other individuals that had other talents. Mine was, of course, federal government contracting, but there were attorneys, accountants, social media folks, you name it, anything that Carl Brown was the executive director of the SBDC. He was trying to build a team of essentially individuals that could rescue our economy. as it pertained to small companies. And for the last 2 years, we've been doing that, still on board as a consultant with them. And yeah, it's just it's a myriad of problems that are occurring in the small business community right now. Federal government contracting essentially has continued on. I mean, it's changed in some ways based upon the conditions that we were under as far as not having any contact. But for the most part, the government's still spending money. They're still, putting out contracts and still doing things the way they had been doing them. And we're working with companies to basically try to get back on board and get back started with them. And for the most part, it's going well.
So, I mean, Michael, the last couple of years have been unprecedented. I mean, maybe you can tell me other moments that have hit us all, like the pandemic, but I truly feel that this is a watershed moment in society, and a lot of suffering for sure for individuals during the last couple of years, but lots of change in terms of business. And I'd just be curious, any insights or things that you're taking away from this moment, that you're seeing success with, and maybe some challenges that you guys wrestled with and new ideas that have come from it.
Yeah, so I'll give you a good example. I mentioned that we were doing training for the Navy under the Advanced Management Program, which is the premier leadership development training program that the Navy has. And right in the midst of our second contract, of course, the pandemic hit, and the leadership training that we would do would be on site in Newport, Rhode Island. And it involved, a lot of not really, classroom learning. It was more facilitation of discussions among, some of these guys that came through the training program that were on their way to becoming admirals and heads of contracting, and leaders in the logistics area of the Navy and so forth, the guys that were in the leadership positions. And they would gather 6 times a year, and we'd facilitate the class, and they would talk about some of the issues they had. And we'd have exercises, team building exercises, facilitating very high level discussions, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the pandemic hits, and we say, we hear from contracting, hey, we got to figure out another way to do this because there's no way.
No classes.
Yeah,
No
we can't
classes.
assemble, but we want to continue. So how do we do that? And we went through about a 9-month exercise of trying to adapt some of the things that we were doing in person into a virtual environment, and trying to essentially make the same impact that we were making with the in-person class. And we found out that it's just not possible. The interaction, the personal interaction, the ability to look people in the eye when you're talking to them about passionate issues that many of these guys shared in the leadership positions they were in. You can't, it's hard to do when you're over a Zoom call like we're on right now. And so we found out that's just not possible. So they had to put it on the shelf for a year and just wait until things calm down. And sure enough, this beginning of this year, it started back again. So, things like that were obviously exercises in trying to discover new ways of approaching an issue, a problem, or a requirement in this case for the government, and figuring out a way to get it done. And of course, I think they made a good decision in realizing that although they could have done it virtually, it would not have had the same impact, the same takeaways as the previous programs had, and they decided just to halt it. So I've seen a lot of that. Let's figure out a way to do it virtually, and then we go through the exercise, and we figure out that it's not worth it. It's basically not, you're not going to get the same return on the time invested and the resources invested to achieve the dysenteria, the expected outcome.
No, I think that's a really interesting one. I mean, we definitely saw outside of the federal sector, many in-person meetings paused for a variety of reasons, certainly because maybe the experience wasn't as effective as it could be in person. And certainly using that technology in some form or fashion as part of a hybrid solution, I think probably will become more of a commonplace in a lot of areas. Although I imagine with the government, because security elements are so important, trying to build cybersecurity around this type of world, and Yeah, Michael, I was joking with you before we started, your background lends perfectly to be designing things for this new metaverse that we're talking about
You
in
bet.
Web3.
You
I
bet.
think the cybersecurity things are going to be
Yeah.
first and foremost. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that too. As I mentioned, we have a client. We still design and build and maintain audiovisual and video conferencing systems, mainly for DoD organizations around the country. And we had a client this morning that was on the phone with us down in Jacksonville that we're going to see in a couple of weeks. And we spent more time talking about security than we did the features of the system. And a lot of people, I think, was starting to begin to believe that video conferencing, secured video conferencing systems might have been on the way out with the advent of Zoom and some of the better technologies that are out there now, that we can do a lot of the things that we were doing only through video conferencing systems like Cisco and Polycom before. But the security element is the thing that obviously, when we're talking about DoD, security is at the very top of their issue of concern. And so, now just making sure that, those systems that we design and build and put in are not susceptible to attacks is now, one of the biggest parts of our design conversation as we go through this. And of course, all the equipment that is implemented to make that happen is now being put in.
Wow.
And it's not going to change. It's only going to get worse, I think, as we go
No,
along.
I mean, it's a great challenge.
It is.
But I think we'll have to figure out some way to navigate through it, because the technology is gonna have to play some deeper role, I guess, going forward. But I mean, in the short term, Michael, here we are, 2022. I call it the year of the future because somehow I think we made it through the pandemic and we're coming out the other side now, and we can start thinking about a future again, which I don't think we were able to do over the last couple of years. What's on the docket for you guys?
Cybersecurity is really dominating a lot of what we're looking at. A lot of our clients are involved in the IT sector of the federal government. And even if they're not involved directly with cybersecurity, it's impacting what we do. To give you an example, the federal government does have certain requirements that they have as a standard if you want to do business with them. And for the first time, sometime toward the end of this year or next year, you're going to, if you're going to be a federal government contractor, you have to get a certain certification called CMMC certification that involves essentially an audit on the part of the government for your company and how it operates, to make sure that you're not a threat to some of the systems that you're going to interface with if you do business with them. That's unprecedented. And that requirement is changing the business model of a lot of firms. Is having to firms are having to adapt themselves to satisfy that requirement, or else they can't do business with the federal government. That's a glaring example of the changing environment that we're seeing ourselves in. And that was happening even before the pandemic happened. That was happening as we began to see a number of the threats, as we all read about in the paper, from foreign actors. Our oil pipeline was interrupted last year. There's been threats that have really impacted us on the, in our everyday lives, but especially when it comes to, the federal government and how it operates. We're seeing a new day, and we're getting involved in that. We're getting involved in helping companies to get that CMMC certification that will allow them to continue to do business, and helping them to kind of change their business model to adapt to that. That's just one good example, but it's happening in other areas of business as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And I'm glad that you're able to support these companies getting that CMMC certification. I mean, if there were companies out there that are listening to this, that are interested in some of this stuff and trying to go after government contracts, understanding how to navigate that universe, how do they get in touch with you, Michael?
Our website is www.roadmapconsulting, or rmcfederal.com. So you can find information there, or you can give us a call at 703-286-5426, or they can email me directly at mperch, Perch at roadmapc for consulting.com.
Excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been talking to Michael Perch. He's the founder and principal of Roadmap Consulting. And as far as I can see, if you have a roadmap that includes federal government contracts, you better give Michael a call. It's a complicated area. We've been down the path a couple of times, and I think we've gotten it right sometimes, and then sometimes I haven't understood why we got it wrong. So, your expertise is extremely valuable to small to medium-sized businesses as well as really big businesses out there. So, Michael, thank you so much for being on Uncaged Day, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Cheers.
Take care.